Hi there, my name is April Sawtelle and welcome to my channel. Today what I'm going to be doing is just showing you what I ended up coming up with the quilt block that I showed you on the last video. That was the big square and a square quilt block. This is what I ended up doing with it, right here behind me. So if you want, you can just go back to the video, I'll link it below, and that will show you how to make the square and a square. Now, what I've done is I have taken all the square and a squares and I have put them together. So this video is going to be about how I put all those square and a squares together to come up with this quilt. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. So what you're going to need for this project is I've just got some pins here. You may want to pin your fabric together. I didn't end up pinning mine, but I need them anyway to put on some numbers that I need to label each end of my quilt when I'm after each row. I've got some marking tools here, and I have come to the table with my squares already prepared. So I ended up cutting out 12 solids. So I used 13 squares and 12 solids. And then by using the solid in between, alternating them, I didn't have to line up the seams. There was only one seam I had to line up, and that was the actual block itself when I assembled the quilt. That made it really easy. Now these measure after they've been all sewn. I started with an 18-inch square and it came down to 17 inches. Okay? So I absolutely loved this block. I loved making it, and it was so quick. The part I didn't like though, it does give waste, and I don't like waste. But I was in such a hurry, I didn't want to take the time to do a lot of cutting. So it was already, all I had to cut was the solid squares out and just the middles. I didn't have to keep sewing and attaching and sewing. I just wanted to do this very quickly. So you do get waste with this because this whole center here is just doubled up fabric. So that's something to think about before you do make this quilt block. You will be, wasting this bottom piece. If you had sewed the sides together, you would have an extra square that you'd be able to keep. But if you're in a pinch and you need a really fast quilt, this quilt was quick. And it was really super fun. It was super fun to make this. I absolutely love the fabric that I chose to work with. This fabric is the batiks. Like I said, I got it from So Yeah. It didn't have a name on it. It was just, I don't know what designer made this fabric. And I had some in my stash as well. The quilt here behind me measures 85 by 85. It's 5 rows across, 5 rows down. I did make this 6 rows down. So then my quilt was actually 85 by 105. I didn't like the 105. I took all that one row off. It was just too long for what I wanted. A lot of my quilts are about 80 by 80. That seems to just be something I seem to really enjoy making. Maybe like 80 by 85, 80 by 90. I'm going to put this up here if you want to take a screenshot. It's just a little pattern of how I came up with this quilt. I'm not a pattern designer. I don't follow patterns, as most of you all know. This is just a quick way of telling you what I did do to come up with this. Then what I decided was I wanted to have some plain squares. I didn't want them all to be square and a square. For one reason, it was because I didn't want to match up all the seams. Again, I needed this quilt in a hurry. So if I would have had these all the same, I would have had to match up all of these seams together to make my rows. And I would have also had to match them up on the bottom. I didn't want to do that. Again, I needed a quick quilt. So then what I did, so simple, this turned out to be 17 inches, okay? Each square and a square. So I cut out 12 solid squares, okay? So then I just alternated. All I did was I took and I lined this up, and I just started lining them up and taking them to my sewing machine. I'm going to show you the whole process. And I just sewed 1/4 inch all the way down. And then I would open it up, and then I would attach the next square and a square. And I alternated this. Now remember, you can make this any size you want to. Again, mine was 85 by 85. So after each row was done, all I do is open them up, attach, open, attach, open. I come over and I give it a press in one direction. So row 1, I would press to the left. Row 2, I would press to the right. Row 3, so on and so forth. That way, when it comes time to match those seams, they would match up. Also, I'm going to use my little pointer here. This is my little candy cane. It's always hanging up on I have behind me and beside me, I have curtain rods hanging like from my ceiling. So they hold my quilts on. And sometimes there's things up there and I need to move them and I can't reach without a chair, so I can use this little hook here of the candy cane and slide things around. So it's very convenient, and it also makes a really good pointer. So once I had my order laid out, I wanted to put the number on there so I knew where I was at with what one needed to be the first one. So it would say 1 left. So I knew if I start here on 1 left, I would follow it right straight through to the end. Same. Row 2, left. That kept me in that order. Row 3, left. And I always do left to right. So once I had all of my rows together, I ended up putting them right sides together. So this whole row was laying on top of this row, right sides together. And I'd sew a seam all the way across. And I would do that all the way down. Now I would take row 1 and 2 and it would lay over row 3. I'd sew all the way across. Open it up. And I did that all the way down. Right sides together. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my presser foot down on the fabric. I'm going to put it right up to my presser foot. I'm going to give it a little back stitch and I'm going to sew those 2 sides together. So I've got 1 solid and 1 square and a square block here. I'm going to do 1/4 inch and I'm going to follow my painter's tape. I'm going to sew all the way down the block. And then I'm going to end it with a back stitch. Take and we're just going to press the seams here. The real seam that we're worried about is just this big seam here that is going to connect the 2 together. That's the only one we really care about. The rest are all laying nice and flat. So just come over and push that to the left, and then on the next row push it over to the right, and that will help nest the seams at the intersections when you attach this to the row on top of it. Again, I'll start with a back stitch. I'm going to follow this all the way down. I'm going to follow my presser foot and my painter's tape. I'm going to keep the fabric on my lap and I'm just going to keep pulling it up as I need it so it stays nice and flat. Then I'm going to come to a seam and a seam on the bottom. And those seams are going to have to be matched up. So to do that, I want 1 seam that it's already sewn going this way, and I want 1 going that way. I'm going to hold that together so they nest. And I'm going to just sew right over that. You don't want to have any pull in your fabric. You want it to be laying really nice and straight and as flat as you possibly can get it, with no pull and no drag. And And then you're just going to sew all the way to the end and then just give it another back stitch. Okay, so now rows 1 and 2 are sewn together. I'm going to take row 2 and I'm going to attach it to row 3. What I'm going to do is just press all of these seams and lay them nice and flat. I'm going to do this to the entire quilt. Another thing is I didn't have much squaring up to do. It really came together that well. Like I thought that I would be having to, really trim these down, and I didn't. Honestly, I didn't trim them. I started to, and there was so little fabric that I had to trim off. I just left it. This quilt is very forgiving, and it has so much going on in it. I didn't bother to square up the blocks once they've been sewn. It just seemed like it was another step I didn't really need to go to with this particular quilt. So, and I absolutely love how it came out. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Remember to keep it simple. Have a nice day. Thanks for watching. Bye.